What if I told you that the biggest twist in Marvel history has already been teased, hidden in plain sight, and buried deep within the so-called ending of Avengers, Endgame? What if the Infinity Saga wasn't truly the conclusion of Tony Stark's story, but rather the beginning of something darker, far more dangerous, and destined to shake the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe to its core? Fans cheered, cried, and mourned when Iron Man snapped his fingers and sacrificed himself to save the universe. But what if that wasn't the end? What if that moment was the birth of something much more sinister? What if Tony Stark secretly became Dr. Doom? This sounds insane, right? How could the heart of the Avengers, the man who carried the MCU for more than a decade, ever become one of the most feared villains in comic book history? But here's the thing. Marvel has always thrived on twists, layers and hidden setups that pay off years later. Thanos was teased back in 2012, yet his true reign didn't arrive until 2018. The multiverse was hinted at long before Loki or Spider-Man No Way Home cracked it open. And now, as Marvel gears up for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, the seeds of the next great villain may already be planted in the ashes of Endgame. The question we're asking today isn't just whether Dr. Doom will appear. That's inevitable. The real question is this: could Doom already be here, hiding under the mask of someone we thought we lost? Could the tragic death of Tony Stark actually be the darkest resurrection of all time? To answer this, we need to dig into the cracks of Endgame, explore the mysterious rules of Pym particles, and unravel why Marvel's Phase 5 and 6 seem obsessed with rewriting history. Because when Captain America returned the Infinity Stones, he carried 4 Pym particles. 3 were used, but 1 remained. And that last vial might have changed everything. So, let's go back to the very beginning of this theory. Not at Endgame's finale, but at the decisions that led Tony Stark down the path of no return. Because to understand how he could become Dr. Doom, we first have to understand how Tony Stark was always flirting with the darker side of genius. Tony Stark's entire arc in the MCU was a balancing act between heroism and hubris. In Iron Man, he was a weapons dealer turned savior. But it was his arrogance that created monsters like Obadiah Stane. In Avengers, Age of Ultron, he tried to build a suit of armor around the world, but his vision gave birth to Ultron, a genocidal AI. Over and over again, Tony danced on the edge of brilliance and disaster. The same mind that created Iron Man could just as easily create the next great tyrant. And that's exactly what Dr. Doom represents. Unchecked genius, unrestrained ambition, and the belief that only one man should rule. Think about it. What separates Tony Stark from Victor Von Doom? He made himself into a god through science. That same act of self-creation is the very foundation of Doom. In the comics, Victor Von Doom is obsessed with rewriting fate, defying death and elevating himself above the gods. Tony may have worn a suit of red and gold, but the seeds of Doom's green and steel were always there. In Age of Ultron, Tony dreamed of a catastrophe he couldn't stop. An army falling from the sky. The Avengers defeated, the world broken. That nightmare drove him to build Ultron, but it also exposed his deepest fear, that no matter how much he did, it would never be enough. That paranoia, that obsessive need to control outcomes, is pure doom. Tony wasn't content with being a hero. He wanted to be the savior of everything. And that is exactly the mindset that creates tyrants. Fast forward to Infinity War. Tony was the only Avenger who truly grasped Thanos' threat. He was haunted by visions, desperate to prepare, and ultimately willing to sacrifice everything to stop him. Doctor Strange didn't show Tony the winning timeline by accident. He chose Tony because he knew Tony would do what no one else could. He would bear the unbearable weight of the snap. But here's the darker angle. What if Strange also knew that Tony's sacrifice wouldn't be an ending, but a transformation? What if Strange saw not only victory, but the birth of Doom? Because in the comics, Doom isn't born in a lab explosion or a single accident. He's forged through loss, tragedy, and the unbearable weight of genius. He loses his mother to dark forces. He scars his face in pursuit of ultimate knowledge. And he decides the only way forward is to rule, to control, to never again feel powerless. Tony's snap in Endgame is his scar. His death is his loss. And his resurrection, through Pym Tech, Kang's meddling, or some multiversal twist, could be the final push that turns him from Iron Man into Iron Tyrant. Here's where the breadcrumbs get even juicier. In leaked reports and insider rumors about Avengers Doomsday, Doom isn't just a one-off villain. He's central to the multiverse saga. But Marvel needs a Doom that audiences will immediately fear, respect, and connect with. Who better than Robert Downey Jr.? Who better than the man who built the MCU? Bringing back RDJ not as the beloved hero, but as the ultimate villain, is the kind of shocking twist that would electrify fans and cement Doom as the franchise's crown jewel. And think about it. Marvel has already shown us variants of Loki, variants of Kang, variants of Spider-Man. Why not a variant of Tony Stark who walked a different path? One where he didn't stop at sacrifice, but at resurrection. One where the Pym particle vial didn't go to waste, but became the seed of his rebirth. That variant doesn't need to be Victor Von Doom from the comics. He could be something new, a Doom forged from iron. And here's the kicker: Avengers. Doomsday isn't just about the Avengers fighting Doom. Both are futurists, inventors, and self-proclaimed problem solvers who believe they see the world more clearly than others. Both have egos the size of universes. Both think they can fix what no one else can. And both are willing to make sacrifices that others wouldn't dare. The only real difference has been choice. Tony chose to be Iron Man. Doom chose to be a ruler. But what happens when Tony no longer has the Avengers to keep him grounded? What happens when death itself strips him of his humanity? This is where the Pym particles come in. In Endgame, time travel wasn't powered by magic or infinity stones. It was powered by Hank Pym's rare particles. These particles weren't just fuel. They were the very keys to reality, shrinking and expanding matter across time and space. Cap was entrusted with 4 vials when he returned the stones. 3 were accounted for, but 1 vanished into thin air. Marvel doesn't leave details like this unresolved. That extra vial wasn't a throwaway. It was a breadcrumb. Imagine this: so Tony Stark, on the brink of death after snapping the gauntlet, doesn't simply fade into nothing. His genius, his consciousness, or even his shattered body could have been stabilized, hidden or transported using that last Pym particle. Maybe not by Cap himself, but by forces watching from the shadows. Forces like Kang the Conqueror, who would have every reason to preserve a mind like Tony's for his multiversal games. Or perhaps by Doom himself, not as Victor Von Doom yet, but as the rebirth of a broken Tony Stark twisted into something new. Now you might say, that's impossible. Tony's story is over. But here's the thing. Marvel never truly lets go of its biggest stars. Just look at Loki, who died multiple times only to return with his own series. Look at Gamora, resurrected from a different timeline. Look at Steve Rogers, who many still believe isn't done. Why would Marvel retire Robert Downey Jr., the face of their cinematic empire, without a shocking twist? The answer is they wouldn't. They'd bring him back, but not as the man we knew. They'd bring him back as his opposite, as his darkest possible self. And that's where Avengers Doomsday comes in. The title alone screams that Doom isn't just arriving. He is the Doomsday event, the catastrophe that no Avenger, no multiverse traveler, no Kang variant can truly stop. But what if the mask of Doom hides the soul of a fallen Avenger? What if the tragedy of Endgame was only the beginning of a much crueler twist? Let's build this piece by piece. Act 1 is about uncovering the cracks that have always existed in Tony's character. The moments where Doom was already hiding in plain sight. 'Cause make no mistake, Doom isn't just about science. He's about destiny. And destiny has been whispering in Tony's ear since the very beginning. From the moment Tony Stark declared, "I am Iron Man," he rewrote destiny. He wasn't chosen by a hammer, blessed by a serum, or born with powers. It's about the Avengers facing the reflection of their greatest hero turned nightmare. Imagine the emotional weight of Peter Parker confronting the man who was his mentor, only now twisted into tyranny. Imagine Dr. Strange realizing the choice he made on Titan didn't just save the universe, but doomed it to Doom's reign. Imagine Steve Rogers, old and broken, returning one last time to face the man who carried his shield in Endgame. That's not just a villain. That's a tragedy. That's Shakespearean. That's Marvel at its most powerful. And in Act 1, that's the story we're uncovering. The seeds of Doom were always there. Tony Stark was always one choice, one tragedy, one twist of fate away from becoming the very thing he feared. Endgame didn't erase that possibility, it planted it. That last Pym particle vial, that missing piece, is the smoking gun. It's the unanswered question Marvel left dangling, knowing we'd one day realize it was the beginning of something darker. At this point, the pieces are on the table. We've traced Tony's flaws, his genius, his hubris. We've connected the missing Pym particle to a possible resurrection. We've seen how RDJ's return as Doom isn't just possible. It's inevitable for Marvel's storytelling ambitions. But this is only the foundation, because in Act 2, we'll dive deeper into how Avengers Doomsday could actually unfold, how Doom's rise connects to Kang's fall, and why Secret Wars is less about multiversal chaos and more about the ultimate betrayal, the Avengers facing the twisted shadow of their greatest hero, where those seeds blossom into the full nightmare of Avengers Doomsday. Because this story isn't about a villain simply appearing out of nowhere, it's about a fallen hero re-emerging in the most tragic, devastating way possible. And the MCU, which thrives on emotional stakes, knows there is nothing more powerful than turning the savior of the universe into its destroyer. Let's begin with the title itself, Avengers Doomsday. That word Doomsday carries two meanings. On the surface, it signals the arrival of Dr. Doom, Marvel's most calculating and terrifying villain. But on a deeper level, it's about Judgment Day, the inevitable reckoning where every choice, every sacrifice, every secret finally comes crashing down. The Avengers thought they ended their story with Endgame. They thought they had secured peace. But what if Endgame wasn't the end at all? What if it was the beginning of their greatest undoing? And that undoing begins with Tony Stark. Because here's the twist. The Tony Stark we buried was not the last Tony Stark. The Tony who whispered, "I am Iron Man," may have died. But another Tony was preserved, fragmented or rewritten in the aftermath. That missing Pym particle vial wasn't just a loose end. It was a lifeline. It was the mechanism by which a new Tony, scarred by death, shaped by cosmic forces, and twisted by desperation, was reborn as something else. Not Iron Man. He positions himself as a savior, repairing the damage caused by Kang's multiversal war. To the desperate and broken, he looks like a hero. Imagine governments, heroes, even ordinary people praising Doom as the man who can finally bring order to chaos. But underneath that mask lies Tony's fury. He isn't fixing the world for them. He's reshaping it in his own image. And that's where the betrayal hits hardest. Because when the Avengers finally uncover the truth, Doom is Tony Stark. They aren't just fighting a new villain. They're fighting their own legacy. They're fighting the man who once saved them all. Picture the emotional devastation of that reveal. Peter Parker, who idolized Tony as a father figure, now has to face the nightmare version of his mentor. Doctor Strange, who handed Tony the one winning timeline, must face the consequence of his choice. And Steve Rogers, wherever he is, must live with the truth that his brother in arms didn't find peace, he found damnation. This is more than a battle of fists and lasers. This is a battle of ideology. Doom believes only he can protect the multiverse, and he's willing to erase entire timelines to do it. The Avengers, broken and divided, must unite not just against Doom's armies, but against the idea that their greatest hero has become their greatest enemy. Now let's connect this to Secret Wars in the comics. Doom plays the central role in the multiversal collapse. When universes collide, Doom seizes godlike power and creates Battleworld, a patchwork reality ruled by him. Marvel is clearly heading toward a cinematic version of this event. But here's the twist. Instead of Victor Von Doom, it could be Tony Stark wearing the mask. Battleworld, in this theory, isn't just Doom's creation. It's Tony's twisted vision of a world where he never failed, where the Avengers never questioned him, where he rules unchallenged. This would elevate Secret Wars beyond just another multiverse crossover. It would make it deeply personal, because instead of faceless universes clashing, it's about the Avengers confronting their own fallen brother, now wielding godlike power. But how does it all end? Marvel loves bittersweet conclusions, and this one would be no exception. The Avengers will try everything to redeem Tony. Peter will plead with him. Strange will bargain with him. Even echoes of Pepper or Morgan could appear through multiversal rifts, begging him to come back. But Doom is too far gone. The man who once declared, "I am Iron Man," now declares that he is the only future, the only savior, the only God. And in the climax, it won't be fists that bring him down. It will be choice. Tony must choose once again between ultimate power and ultimate sacrifice. And just as in Endgame, he will choose sacrifice, but this time not as Iron Man. This time as Doom. In a final act of redemption, Tony destroys himself, shattering Doom's reign and freeing the multiverse from collapse. The Avengers win, but at a cost. Not even Tony Stark, but Doom. How does this happen? Let's map the chain of events. Captain America returns the stones, believing he's tying up loose ends. But when he places the Tesseract back in 1970, when he leaves the Soul Stone on Vormir, when he stands before the Ancient One to return the Time Stone, reality itself shifts. The timelines don't close perfectly. They fracture, echo, and ripple. This is exactly what we saw in Loki when the sacred timeline was shattered. Those fractures don't just create new universes. They create new possibilities. Now imagine a reality where Tony doesn't simply disintegrate after the snap. Imagine his broken body or even his consciousness preserved. In the chaos of fractured timelines, that final Pym particle, unused and unaccounted for, becomes the bridge, a way to slip Tony through the cracks of time, saving him from death but not from the cost of resurrection. And here's where the genius of Marvel's setup comes in. Who thrives in fractured timelines? Who manipulates broken universes for his own ends? And who would see the value of preserving Tony Stark? Not as a hero, but as a tool? Kang the Conqueror himself. But Kang underestimates Tony. He always underestimates the human variable. Because Tony Stark doesn't come back grateful. He doesn't come back as Kang's ally. He comes back broken, furious, and stripped of everything that once grounded him. No Pepper, no Morgan, no Avengers. Just raw genius rage, and the haunting memory that he gave his life for a world that still fell into chaos. In his mind, the Avengers failed him. The world failed him. Even Strange's one timeline failed him. And so if Tony can't save the world as Iron Man, he'll rule it as Doom. This is where Doom's philosophy begins. To fuse with Tony's, Doom, in the comics, is obsessed with control. He doesn't believe in freedom or chance. He believes only in his vision. He tells himself he's not a tyrant, but a savior, because under his rule, humanity will thrive. Tony's trauma makes him ripe for this transformation. Think about it. Tony already tried to build Ultron, already tried to wrap the Earth in armor, already tried to control the uncontrollable. All it takes is one more push, one final tragedy, for him to embrace the idea that only he should rule. And when he dons that mask, it's not just to hide scars, it's to bury Iron Man forever. Tony Stark dies a second time and Dr. Doom is born. So how does Avengers Doomsday unfold with this setup? The Avengers of today are fractured. Sam Wilson is still growing into his role as Captain America. Spider-Man is erased from everyone's memory and isolated. Thor has left Earth behind. Strange is trapped in the web of incursions. The team is scattered, vulnerable, and searching for a new sense of purpose. That's when Doom strikes. At first, no one even knows it's Tony. Doom arrives not as a flamboyant villain, but as a mysterious figure restoring fractured worlds. They lose Tony all over again. And this time, it's final. No resurrection, no Pym particle, no loophole, just the memory of the man who saved them twice. Once as Iron Man and once as Doom. This is why Avengers Doomsday could be Marvel's boldest, darkest, and most powerful story yet. It takes everything we love about the MCU, its heroes, its sacrifices, its emotional core, and turns it upside down. It forces us to face the terrifying idea that our greatest heroes can also become our greatest villains. And it gives Robert Downey Jr. the chance to return, not in a recycled cameo, but in the most shocking, legendary role of his career. Because let's be honest, audiences love Iron Man, they always will. But to make them fear him, to make them cry as they fight him, that's storytelling magic. That's Marvel pushing the MCU into new, unforgettable territory. And that ultimately is the theory. Tony Stark secretly becomes Dr. Doom, and his rise sets the stage for Avengers Doomsday, Secret Wars, and the ultimate conclusion of the multiverse saga. So, if this theory blew your mind and gave you a whole new way to look at the MCU's future, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown. And if you really want to support the channel and help us build more theories and stories like this, consider dropping a 25 super thanks. It goes a long way in keeping this community alive and thriving. Because the MCU may be filled with gods, monsters, and multiverses, but sometimes the biggest twist of all is the one we never saw coming.